Hello and welcome to Follow the Money. I'm Rain Musngib. Join us as we explore the tools and insights you need to jumpstart your financial journey. The International Monetary Fund warns that the global economy in 2025 faces heightened uncertainty due to the orientation of economic policies, particularly the directions of U.S. trade policy. IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva also pointed out that a strong U.S. dollar, both against advanced economy currencies and against emerging market currencies, could potentially fuel higher funding costs for emerging market economies, especially for low-income countries. In its latest World Economic Outlook, or WEO, report released last October, the IMF said growth is projected to hold steady at 3.2% in 2024 and 2025. The IMF is set to release its World Economic Outlook update on January 17th. From China to Europe, Canada to Mexico, world markets are already reeling from Donald Trump's promise to jack up tariffs when he becomes U.S. president in less than 2 weeks. Experts anticipate the scale of the duties would upend trade flows, raise costs, and draw retaliation even further. That's as sources told CNN last week that the president-elect is considering declaring a national economic emergency to provide legal justification for the tariffs. The report said the move will allow Trump to build a new tariff program by using the International Economic Emergency Powers Act, which authorizes the president to manage imports during a national emergency. Economists say Trump's overall tariff plans, likely his most consequential economic policy, would push U.S. import duties back up to 1930s levels, stoke inflation, collapse U.S.-China trade, draw retaliation, and drastically reorder supply chains. One analyst says electronics, auto parts, chemicals, pharmaceutical active ingredients, consumer and home goods, shoes, toys, and sporting goods would all be hit very hard, with higher costs affecting American importers and consumers.
In terms of magnitude, I think it would not be an overstatement to say we ain't seen nothing yet. And this is based on, kind of the full program of tariffs that President Trump has discussed on the campaign trail. So if we consider him 10 to 20% on exports from all sources, except for 60% on China, we're seeing a tariff coverage that's 10 times the magnitude of the first trade war. And the tariff rates are much higher.
We deal with over 450 manufacturers and wholesalers. I mean, I can tell you that what I remember, maybe 2 or 3 or 5 of that are manufactured in America. If 60% will happen, that is a major devastating to the industry in total. It's a major thing. It will end up in the neighborhood, I would assume, most probably a 20% or 25% increase in the cost, and it have to be absorbed somehow, and it's got to be absorbed by, in that case, majority of it by the consumer.
Bloomberg reports JP Morgan chases Jamie Dimon that tariffs, if properly used, can help resolve issues such as unfair competition and national security. One manufacturing firm welcomes the tariffs, expecting they will make their products more competitive price-wise and give a boost to the U.S.'s domestic garment manufacturing sector.
We export $10 billion worth of apparel and textile. 80% of that is specialized. So what is 10 billion going to shrink down to 9 billion with retaliatory tariffs? I don't think so. We have much greater opportunity to increase our share of the U.S. market through tariffs. Right now in the United States, we make less than 3% of all the clothes that are consumed in the United States. Let's grow 3% to 6%. Tariffs help us do that.
For the US economy, exports are important, but not that important in driving growth, as is the case for most other countries. So a trade war based on tariff escalation would hurt other countries a great deal more than the US. So I suspect that other countries will try to strike a bargain with Trump. So what Trump is trying to do is make sure that he can impose tariffs on China and other US trading partners without going through the process of getting congressional approval, and also trying to set things up so that the tariffs, when they are imposed, if they are imposed, do not run afoul of World Trade Organization regulations. So a declaration of this sort would essentially suggest that the tariffs are being imposed for national security reasons, which would exempt them from World Trade Organization regulations prohibiting the use of tariffs for purely economic purposes.
Outgoing U.S. President Joe Biden described the nation as facing an inflection point ahead of the second presidency of Donald Trump. Biden highlighted job creation during his term in an address on the U.S. economy over the past 4 years.
And all told, in 4 years, we've created 16.6 million new jobs, the most of any single presidential term in history. There wasn't a month, not a single month, when the economy lost jobs. Another record for any presidency. We came to office with a different vision of America. From the first 2 months I was in office, I signed the American Rescue Plan that put shots in arms and checks in pockets to vaccinate the nation and return us to full employment. We followed up with long-term investments in our future. My Investing in America agenda, which includes the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the CHIPS and Science Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, together mark the most significant investment in America since the New Deal. The Inflation Reduction Act alone is the most significant investment in climate and clean energy ever, anywhere in the world. We have also seen 21 million new business applications filed in our administration, the most in any single presidential term on record. And it's important because every single one of those applications for small business is an act of hope, believing in the country. There's so much more from our playbook. But the bottom line is, we've come a long way from the crisis we've inherited. During my presidency, we saw the lowest average unemployment rate of any administration in the last 50 years. And battling through the worldwide effects of the pandemic, Putin's war in Ukraine, and supply chain disruption, inflation rate is down to nearly 2%. These are simple, well-established economic benchmarks that measure the strength of any economy, the success or failure of any president's 4 years in office. We did it by fundamentally changing the economic policy of this country. After decades of trickle-down economics that primarily benefited those at the very top, Kamala and I and our administration have written a new playbook that's growing the economy from the middle out and the bottom up that benefits everyone. The new playbook is working, but in 10 days, our administration will end and the new administration will begin. We're going to face another inflection point. Do we continue to grow the economy from the middle out and the bottom up as we have the past 4 years, or do we backslide to an economic theory that benefits those at the very top while working people and middle-class people struggled for their fair share of growth?
Mexico is going to find a solution to avoid the imposing of tariffs by the United States. Economy Minister Marcelo Ebrard compared the current trade tension with previous negotiations during Trump's first term, saying he made big tariff threats around migration that did not come to pass. Ebrard reiterated that Trump's tariff threats seemed unrealistic because of the heavy impact they would have on the U.S. economy.
You can't have low inflation and sustained economic growth in the U.S. if, at the same time, you're rolling out strong protectionist policies against Mexico and China. It is not compatible. Of course, you will ask me, in the meantime, what will happen? Well, here we are, we have to go through these waters, but structurally, it is not possible to. That's a key advantage for Mexico.
Ebrard said Mexico is also looking to broaden its trade relationship with other countries beyond the U.S., adding that the United Arab Emirates Sovereign Wealth Fund was studying investments in Mexico's semiconductor and renewable energy sectors. Meanwhile, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum highlighted the benefits of the trade agreement between Mexico, the U.S., and Canada, noting its role in job creation and economic integration. She maintains an 80% approval rate 100 days after her inauguration. Justin Trudeau says Canada is ready to respond with counter tariffs against the U.S. Speaking to MSNBC's Inside with Jen Psaki, the outgoing Canadian Prime Minister said his government will have to retaliate if the U.S. puts tariffs on Canadian products. Canada buys more U.S.-made goods than any other country. That's according to U.S. Commerce Department export data. That's about $320 billion in the first 11 months of last year. The U.S. trade deficit on goods with Canada was $55 billion during that period. Bloomberg reported one draft retaliation plan circulating within the Canadian government would affect almost every category of products imported by Canada from the U.S. When the first Trump administration placed tariffs on steel and aluminum in 2018, the Canadian government put levies on a list of U.S. manufactured items that included household appliances, bourbon whiskey, and boats. Emirati billionaire Hussein Sajwani said he expects more investments from the oil-rich Gulf into the U.S. as President-elect Donald Trump's second term in office heralds a pro-business climate. The real estate tycoon and longtime business partner of Trump this week announced at the president-elect's Florida Mar-a-Lago resort that he planned to invest $20 billion in data centers in 8 U.S. states over the coming years. Sajwani, whose Dubai-based Damak Properties real estate firm owns the only Trump-branded golf course in the Middle East, made the announcement alongside Trump, who gave a commitment to expedite regulatory processes for such big-ticket investments. He said those policies would encourage others to invest in the U.S. in the coming years, adding that there were significant opportunities in artificial intelligence and other technology.
I think his overall policies of pro-businesses, which he announced several times, those are the one who encourages the businessmen to invest more. And as you appreciate, it's a huge economy, America, and the opportunities are big. And especially now with the advancement of the AI, I see mega opportunity in the artificial intelligence in all the aspects. And of course, we are at the infrastructure side of it, building data center. But also there is a huge opportunity in AI, in the modeling, in the large language model, in the forensic. And we already investing large amount of money in the private equity and in the direct investments. So we are investor in XI, we are investor in SpaceX, we are investor in Anthropic and OpenAI. So investing in those companies side by side. I see, especially as I see the technology, more and more money going to the U.S. because it's quite advanced in that field, compared to any other part of the world. No, I mean, he, as a president-elect, want to encourage businesses to come to the U.S., and we told them we want to come to the U.S. and we want to invest in data center. We already invested in private equity, investor in the property, and he welcomed the idea. The reason we're focusing on the Sun Belt and on the certain parts of U.S., majority because of availability of land with power. Of course, land is plenty available, but land with electricity, with power, is only certain states. Also, we're looking for the states where they are more business-friendly, approvals, environmental approvals.
Meanwhile, AccuWeather estimates $135 to $150 billion in damage and economic loss from California wildfires. AccuWeather's broad number included estimated insured and uninsured damage, disruptions to commerce, job market, and tourism and infrastructure. Initial estimates from other analysts also suggested massive numbers in insured losses ranging from $10 to $60 billion. RBC Capital Markets analysts added that losses were expected to be among the most costly in history, particularly given the number of high-value homes impacted. JP Morgan warned it could potentially rise even higher if the fires are not controlled.
The
Of course, we're looking at things like the amount of insured damage that's occurred and uninsured damage. But far beyond that, we're considering things like disruptions to commerce, the cost of job losses, businesses that may never reopen in the affected areas, tourism, in fact, damage to infrastructure like sewer, other utilities, gas lines, things of that nature, even roadways. And then we're looking at the long tail of costs that are going to be associated with this, including the cost of relocation for so many families, tens of thousands of families who are going to need to find shelter elsewhere in the short term and perhaps for many months or years. The cost to clean up all of this debris, the long tail of impacts, negative impacts to tourism in the area, and also the long tail of impacts, costly impacts, and dangerous impacts to people's physical and mental health. Some of those impacts may last for years to come. Having such a destructive hurricane season, a very destructive tornado season with lots of tornadoes across the United States, and now just a few days into 2025, a significant historic disaster in terms of wildfire across Southern California. That is a state that's known for wildfires, and in California and particularly Southern California. But what was so different about this is that it occurred in a densely populated area with some of the most expensive real estate in the entire country. That's why this disaster is clearly going to become California's most costly wildfire in modern times and may become one of, if not the top, most disastrous wildfire and damaging and costly wildfire in U.S. modern history.
Shares of insurance companies such as Travelers, Allstate, and Chubb dropped on Friday over AccuWeather's estimate. Other financial groups estimated for economic losses from the LA fire.
Well, there's something really important that California consumers should know who are in the fire areas. California has a consumer protection law that says in the wake of a wildfire disaster, insurance companies are prohibited from non-renewing consumers for a full year. So anyone in a fire zone or in the surrounding zip codes, whether it's Pacific Palisades, the Eaton fire, they will be protected from non-renewals for the next year. And that will be particularly good news for consumers who may have gotten a non-renewal notice recently that hadn't yet taken effect. Those non-renewals will now be paused. We need new protections in place to prevent insurance companies from abandoning consumers who do the right thing and harden their homes, meet state wildfire guidelines for brush clearance and home protection. That way, we can make sure that Californians who do the right thing can maintain their coverage. We create an incentive for other consumers to do that in the future, and we stabilize the home insurance market. So that is a reform that's desperately needed in California to start getting insurance companies covering Californians again.
The LA County Medical Examiner says the death toll in Los Angeles wildfires has reached 24. Coming up, we'll speak with a private hospitals organization on PhilHealth payments. Stay on BNC and follow the money. Welcome back to Follow the Money. The Philippine Health Insurance Corporation, or PhilHealth, plays a pivotal role in the nation's healthcare system, ensuring that citizens have access to essential medical services. But recent reports indicate that private hospitals are facing significant delays in receiving payments for claims, with pending amounts reaching up to 6 billion pesos. Joining us today is Dr. Jose Rene de Grano, president of the Private Hospitals Association of the Philippines, to shed light on these pressing issues and discuss the implications for healthcare providers and patients alike. Dr. De Grano, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, good morning, Rain, and to all our viewers.
Welcome to the program. Recent data indicates that PhilHealth has unpaid claims to private hospitals amounting to approximately 6 billion pesos. Is this true? There are some claims also delays impacted hospital operations and patient care.
Well, in a way, yes, of course. There is actually around 4 to 6 billion unpaid claims still. That was way back, I think, 2020 to 2022. But recently, the current accounts are very good now. They are trying to pay us as fast and as efficient as for the past year under Mr. Ledesma. So actually, what we're actually asking them to have to pay for us are those bills that were there for around 2 to 3 years ago, which amounts to around 4 to 6 billion.
Right. Well, in October 2024, PhilHealth has already paid about 4.32 billion pesos in claims. Is that correct? About 60% directed to private healthcare facilities. Now, despite these payments, significant amounts remain unsettled. What challenges persist in the claims settlement process?
Well, actually, there is already an increase, by around 30 to 50% in the benefits of our members. And these are advance payments made by the private hospitals. And if they continue to have more or less a delay in the payment of our claims, then that will increase the accounts receivables of hospitals from PhilHealth. And that will, of course, affect very much the operational expenses of these hospitals because private hospitals are not subsidized by government.
Dr. Tigrano, I'm receiving reports from some private hospitals saying that PhilHealth is making the claims process very, very technical. Is that correct? Like they are disapproving certain claims if it's lacking 0.10 centavos or something of the sort. Plus, senior citizens who have had PhilHealth for a long time are also resisting, being able to file their claims with private hospitals. Is that correct? Doctors are also having a hard time filing their claims.
Actually, that's very technical. But anyway, for the past year or so, the payments were as I said, were very good, more or less, no, compared to the last maybe 3 or 4 years ago. But then, of course, these hitches are usually resolved by talking with PhilHealth directly, especially the private hospitals. They negotiate with different regional offices of PhilHealth. And then, of course, these very technical things are already being taken care of. And the claims are being made through e-claims, which is supposedly digital and which is more efficient.
Good to hear. Now, Dr. Tigrano, you were mentioning that there are expanded benefits from PhilHealth, but given the backlog in payments to the private hospitals, is there a difficulty in being able to service these expanded benefits? And given the financial strain caused by the delayed payments, can you share any personal experiences from hospital staff that highlight the operational challenges faced during this period?
Well, actually, we welcome the increase in benefits. That is an increase in benefits for our patients. They will more or less decrease the out-of-pockets of our patients. But then if PhilHealth will not do its job of paying us at once these claims, which are supposed to be advance payments for the benefits of these patients, then we will have a problem in our operational expenses. And of course, some smaller hospitals who do not have what they call a buffer for this funding, then they will experience problems in paying for the salaries of their staff and then buying additional supplies and goods and medicines for their patients. And that may cause our smaller hospitals to downsize and probably even close if payments are not made efficiently by PhilHealth.
Dr. Tigrano, considering all these, what is your call to government, to PhilHealth, to the finance department as they talk about the PhilHealth's budgets?
Well, of course, I thought that giving or defunding the PhilHealth, for us, I think that's a wrong idea. But then, of course, they have their own reasons. But of course, what we want is, since they have already increased the benefits, then it's up for PhilHealth to then return to us as an insurer or to pay us as fast as they could, so that our operational expenses, the hospital will not be hampered by this advance payment that we have made. Yes.
Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Jose Rene de Grano, President of the Private Hospitals Association of the Philippines. Grateful for you sharing your insights on this critical issue.
Thank you, Ms. Rain.
Well, ensuring timely settlements of PhilHealth claims is essential for the sustainability of private hospitals and the well-being of patients across the nation. And that is it for today's edition of Follow the Money. I'm Rain Musni. Thank you so much for watching. Keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News channel, always on top.